Welcome to my channel. This is Bruce the Boss, and I have some great news to report from the great Lone Star State here in Texas as it pertains to our COVID numbers since reopening 100%. But before I do, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you are new, and if you are already subscribed, go ahead and double check your notification button. As I mentioned in my last video, I was notified in the comment section by one of my subscribers that YouTube must be messing with my channel, which is a very small channel, by the way, but that individual had not gotten a notification in a long while, despite the fact that I was putting out at least 7 videos within a 10-day period, practically a video per day. And yet yesterday, the last video I did was the very first notification they got. So YouTube is definitely messing with the algorithm. Apparently, subscriptions by themselves and or those who subscribe and initially do the notification doesn't mean a whole lot. So you definitely want to check your notifications if you are subscribed. And your subscriptions, for those who are new to the channel, go a long way with fighting against the algorithms and system that is trying to suppress any news that is alternative from the mainstream narrative. So with that said, let's get into the great news. This Forbes article, which is one of many breaking news here on May 17th, has reported that Texas reports 0 coronavirus deaths for the first time since the pandemic began. Yes, you heard that right. Texas reported no deaths from the coronavirus for the first time in more than a year as the state's ramped up vaccine rollout slashed new infections, hospitalizations, and fatalities from the virus. Let's see here. To date, right now, just to give a heads up, just in case you were curious on where we're at on the vaccine rollout, by the way, some people may want to give more credit to the vaccinations. Others have been criticizing us on our vaccine rollout. So to date, as of May 17th, 41% of Texans have received at least 1 dose of the vaccination. Another 33% are fully vaccinated. So 33% are at the very least fully vaccinated. That's 33% out of 29 million. You can do the math. 41% though overall at least one dose. So yes, Texas is admitting that it's lagging behind other states in terms of its vaccine rollout, and yet we're ahead of almost every other state in terms of beating them to the punch of reporting 0 deaths. And as Governor Greg Abbott reported here or tweeted out again, and that's great news because I think we're only one of 3 states that have reported as to recently breaking the streak of not having, in terms of now having no deaths related to COVID for the first time in over a year. 0 deaths related to COVID, first time since March of 2020. Fewer COVID cases over 13 months. By the way, I don't really want to talk about, I really don't care so much about cases and positivity rates. If over 80% of those who are testing positive, or 90% of those testing positive, depending on the demographic, are asymptomatic and or such mild symptoms such as a cough, loss of smell. If that's the worst of it, then a case like that is so mild. Get at me when you're talking about more severe, moderate cases where you're down and out fever, long-term symptoms as a result, which are very few and far between. But all of the numbers, regardless, are down. Hospitalizations are down. That's great news for Texas. By the way, this is despite opening up, and we're 10 weeks after Governor Greg Abbott announced that we were removing all state restrictions as it pertains to the COVID-19, mask mandates, capacity limitations on businesses. That was 8 weeks ago. And here we are. And if you don't believe the tweet in this article, take a look at our Texas COVID-19 dashboard or database. Again, so confirmed cases spiked during the winter. As you would expect, colder months, a virus like this thrives during cold winter months. It can survive in the air and on surfaces for much, much longer in colder temperatures. But let's see here. So again, Governor Abbott removed all state mandates, leaving it up to the hands of Texans, citizens and businesses to make up their own decision on what they want. at a point in time when cases, confirmed cases, were spiraling downward. And yet we got heavily criticized for doing so. So here's the point right here. Here we go. I'll leave it right here. March the 2nd, 2 days after Governor Abbott removed all of the restrictions. It's been nothing but downward spiral there. New probable cases also on a downward trend remaining. And then fatalities down here. Again, as normal, it spiked during the winter months because a virus like this thrives. But ever since then, it's been free falling downwards and downwards until we got to the point where we were at no new deaths. 0. So look at this, fatalities going down. So now I want to call out so many people who were criticizing Governor Greg Abbott and state of Texas decision, calling him, kind of copying off of the Death Santis, Death Abbott, saying it was a huge mistake. And when you listen to this footage I'm about to play, it's going to make you rethink everything we've been told when you listen to the warnings from every authority figure, whether it was Dr. Fauci, President Biden, those in the media who were so critical of this. Look at us now, 10 weeks later, how dead wrong they were. What were we doing up until this point following all of these individuals? So without further ado, let's start with the first individual, our very own President Joe Biden.
Texas, I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease because of the way in which we're able to get vaccines in people's arms. We've been able to move that all the way up to the end of May to have enough for every American, every adult American to get a shot. And the last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It's
Neanderthal thinking, he says. So what does that say when the President of the United States was so highly critical of Governor Greg Abbott and the decision of Texas to leave it in the hands of individuals that we seem to be getting it right, actually. Since that decision was made, things seem to be working out. What does that say about the leadership in this country at the highest level? What does that say about our president's decision-making, the plan he's following, as well as that of a lot of these blue states? All right, so let's do the next video. This one represents the majority think of what a lot of people on the far left think when it comes to lifting restrictions. And this is the logic they use to justify the heavy arm government restrictions and their mandates that still exist.
Governor Abbott has just lifted the mandatory mask mandate in the entire state of Texas. Now businesses are back at 100% capacity. So when there's a giant spike in our country, you're gonna know exactly who to blame. You can say don't mess with Texas all you want. You know who can mess with Texas? The wrath of God. Viruses don't care about your weird state pride. Get over it.
So that is essentially what we were hearing for the longest from the left. Now, again, that was 10 weeks ago. I showed you the chart earlier in the video. Show me where the spike was. No spike. But it just goes to show how much fear has been implanted in Americans across and people across the world. And you have to stop and think, what was the justification for all that fear? Clearly it was wrong. But let's show the next thing. Just as a representation of some of what has been going on here in Texas, let's take a look at what they had to say on the game opener for the Texas Rangers game back on, I believe that was April the 6th. So we're talking about now about 7 weeks since the incident, roughly. And given, depending on when you're watching this video, maybe 8 weeks and plus.
And Texas Rangers game in Arlington, Texas this week, because it appears to show the majority of the 40,000 fans present disregarded the rule to wear masks at all times except when eating or drinking. What kind of precedent does this set for future games? What I'm really curious about, Dr. Ogden, is do we have any kind of effective contact tracing? If an event like this took place in South Korea or in Taiwan, you can bet your bottom dollar that they would be tracing everybody there because, well, first of all, would they even, I guess the question is, when you see an image like that, are you worried? That's the bottom line.
Yeah, totally. I am. I was like, really my jaw was on the ground. I just think it's too fast. Texas has vaccinated 16% of its population. This is exactly what keeps happening, where we're sort of flinging open the gates when we have not vaccinated the country. We have not reached herd immunity, and there's these variants around. There are 3 strikes against us.
Yes, we packed out the stadium there at the Texas Rangers game. Yes, the overwhelming majority of the people, as you saw on the clips, that they made sure they showed you, we're not wearing a mask, we're not socially distancing, the seats were not at all spaced out. It was all about fear factor or shock value, like, oh my goodness. And yes, they paraded a doctor on there in order to show this is totally against what we recommend, we the experts. That was 7 to 8 weeks ago. No spike. And again, 0 deaths. We just broke the streak. Cases, hospitalizations, death on a sharp decline. Everything against that so-called experts' advice, and we're getting it right. You can see the manipulation that they're doing, and it's not fair and balanced. This is all about fear and more regulations. I'll do one more video and then I'll call it a night.
With that in mind, I'm curious what advice you have for the good people of Texas and the good people of Mississippi who maybe be given some bad information right now by the leaders of their state.
My strong advice to them, Joe, would be to actually continue to implement the public health measures. Now is not the time to pull back. Don't want to repeat now. We were going in the right direction. Now's the time to keep the foot on the accelerator and not pull off, because the thing that we don't want is yet again another surge. So I would advise the people of Texas and Mississippi to just abide by the public health measures that we talk about all the time: uniform wearing of masks, physical distancing, avoiding congregate settings, particularly indoors, washing your hands frequently. We just have to keep doing that.
That was back on March 4th, a day after Governor Greg Abbott made his announcement, and 6 days prior to that going into effect. And I'm still waiting on Joe Scarborough to issue a retraction or an apology to Governor Abbott for dare reprimanding him and saying that he was given bad advice. And think about that for a moment. Those in the media think it's bad advice that you, the citizens, are free to decide what you want to do. Because that's essentially what Greg Abbott said. He's leaving it in the hands of the Texans, the citizens of the state, and the business owners to decide what they want to do. And that's bad advice. And then you had Anthony Fauci, someone who one of my former high school classmates who goes by the name of Ace said was the expert we have to be following. Well, the expert has been on every single side of the issue. Don't wear a mask. It's, a placebo effect. Wear a mask. No, wear 2 masks. And then you just heard them here. Oh, it's too early. They should not be doing this. They need to put the pedal to the metal as it pertains to following our guidelines to the T, 100%, fully masked, socially distanced. We're not doing a lot of that, and everything seems to be working. So I got to say, the expert, you're fired. It's time we got to stop listening to just one individual or one narrative and start opening up to all. I'm not saying, and that's not advocating don't follow the science, because that has actually become a term that doesn't mean anything anymore, because when they say that, they just want to follow the science that, I guess you can say, validates their point of view, their agenda. Because, for instance, the CDC just came out with a guidance for those fully vaccinated. Hey, you don't need to wear a mask. And what do those on the far left say? I'm still wearing my mask. I don't care. It was never about follow the science, but I digress. They're not even following all of the scientific information, data, and or viewpoints that are out there, because there's been a lot out there that contradicts the mainstream narrative. But that's been suppressed. That's been deleted. That's been censored. YouTube just recently censored Governor Ron DeSantis and his roundtable discussion, as I mentioned before, with professors, epidemiologists, virologists, scientists from Oxford, Stanford, and what was the other one? Yale and Harvard. You know, the most prestigious schools in the world were censored by YouTube because it did not adhere to the science that YouTube has deemed is the one to only follow and listen to, despite the fact that they've been wrong. So I just want to put that out there. Yay to Texas. Texas strong, looking great. Again, just as a reminder, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. It goes a long way with helping this channel grow and opening up so that the dialogue could be had regarding many alternative forms of information that's not being discussed and they're shared, as well as just helping with the channel grow and allowing those to know, hey, you're not alone. And by the way, I'm also competing in a 100-mile charity ride for multiple sclerosis. So if you stuck around to watch the video up to this point, feel free to donate to my charity donation page. I'll put a link to the description box below. Go ahead and check that out and or share with friends and family. Every dollar will go to funding research and or treatment to help those dealing with and fighting against multiple sclerosis live the best life possible. All right, this is Bruce the Boss Brooks. I want to thank you. Love you, Texas. I'm out. Peace.